Zechariah has been presenting us with visions almost continuously from chapter 1. In chapters 5 to 6, we have the last 3 of the sequence, making 8 in all. After these comes an oracle regarding the coronation of the branch. In the sixth vision, which begins in chapter 5, Zechariah sees a flying scroll. It is huge. It is about 30 feet long, but that is not the unusual or strange bit. It is its 15-foot width. The dimensions are the same size as the porch in Solomon's temple, but it is not clear if there is any significance in this. More important is how the scroll represents the covenant the Lord made with Israel. But why the strange size and proportions, and the fact that it is flying? The fact that it is airborne might remind us that the law comes from God, but also that it has now come with a special purpose, which is to purify the redeemed community. The written law was now coming into prominence during this period of restoration, which would be firmly established as authoritative during Jesus' time, with experts devoted to every jot and tittle. This imagery of a flying scroll with 2 laws from the 10 Commandments on it may reflect this process, where the written word of God begins to reshape Judaism. As for its strange size, one commentator put it well. The dimensions serve to show the vastness and the power of the curse. The scroll was gigantic, overwhelming, and fearful. But why these 2 specific laws? Another commentator suggested that these 2 laws were connected in a current problem, namely withholding pledged funds or resources for building the temple. If someone had pledged something with an oath but not given it, they could be accused of stealing because they were holding on to what no longer belonged to them. Thus, oath-breaking and stealing point to the sin of people investing in their own houses while neglecting the house of the Lord, which we saw in Haggai. The curse of the scroll affects the house of the guilty one. The 7th vision of the woman in the basket has unsurprisingly generated many questions. One regards the size of the basket. How can a woman fit in it? Here again, like the scroll, we have bizarre proportions. Visions, like dreams, don't have to make sense or follow the laws of physics. But some have suggested that the woman is actually a figurine, an idol. This would fit with what the angel says in verse 11, where he says that in the land of Shinar, which is Babylon, they will build a house, meaning a temple, and that the basket will be set on its base, like an idol. When temples were made, a special foundation stone was laid, which we see in chapter 4, verses 7 to 9, which Zerubbabel brings out probably from Solomon's temple and lays for the new one. But also inserted into the foundation, or buried underneath them, were foundation deposits. These could be amulets or tools or metals. These were intended to protect the edifice built on top of them, to ward off demons and prevent the structure from failing or decaying. The woman in the basket with the lead is probably one of these foundation deposits. Removing it to Babylon also shows a purification of the temple and therefore the people. Why is wickedness figured as a woman? It may be because of the feminine cults which had plagued Israel, such as the Queen of Heaven. Strange also are the winged women who carry the basket away. These are not angels, but may be genies from Babylon. The 8th and final vision links back to the first vision with the coloured horses going out into all the earth. The chariots in this vision now add the element of the military might of God and are 4 in number, as they are to go to all the earth. They have first presented themselves to God in the divine council, like Satan will do in Job and as we have seen in Micaiah's vision. The final verse, verse 8, seems to imply that the northern regions have been subdued militarily. The north was where the invaders came from and where the Israelites were exiled. The chapter ends with an oracle about having a crown, or possibly 2 crowns made, one silver and one gold, and putting it on the head of Joshua the high priest. He is identified in verse 12 as the branch mentioned in chapter 3, verse 8. The earlier prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah, had both spoken of a branch when prophesying about a future king coming from the line of David. Isaiah 11 speaks of a shoot coming out of the stump of Jesse and a branch coming out from its roots. The Hebrew words he uses are different from here in Zechariah, but the imagery and referent are the same. Zechariah uses the word which Jeremiah uses in Jeremiah 23:5 and 33:15, again talking about the future Davidic king. Zechariah is instructed to crown Joshua, but Joshua is a priest, not a king. Furthermore, it is Zerubbabel who not only ought to be anointed king, but also who is building the temple, who laid the foundation stone, and, as prophesied in chapter 4, verse 9, will also complete it. Why then is there also a priest beside the throne? First of all, the Hebrew has crown in the plural, though other ancient versions, such as the Greek, have it in the singular. To complicate matters, even in the Hebrew, whilst the noun is plural, the verb is singular, which has led some to suggest it was 1 crown with 2 ringlets. Or the text could be referring to a diarchy, a joint rulership of king and priest, as verse 13 does say that the priest will be beside the throne and that there will be peace between them. After all, in the vision in chapter 4, the 2 olive trees on either side of the lampstand probably represent the leadership of Zerubbabel and Joshua. Later in Judaism, as seen in the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the messianic expectations was that there would be 2 messiahs, one a king, the other a priest, based on this text. However, the explanation that I think is probably right is that this ceremony is symbolic. God chooses Joshua the priest to represent the branch and is not actually identifying him as such. The prediction that he will build the temple makes the most sense if it is a future temple in a new messianic age. The fact that in verse 15 God promises that those who are far off shall come and help to build the temple of the Lord suggests the return of all the lost Israelites who will help to build the messianic temple. That all this will happen only if they diligently obey the voice of the Lord further suggests that this is all not happening now, but is promised for the future.